The moment you found this message was not loud. Nothing cracked open in the sky, nothing dramatic arrived at your door, and yet something shifted quietly around you, like the air before sunrise when darkness slowly realizes it cannot stay. There are moments that arrive without permission, moments that slip between ordinary seconds and gently rearrange the direction of a soul. You carried more weight than most people ever noticed. Smiles covered it, routines hid it, and responsibilities wrapped around it until even you forgot how heavy everything had become, but hidden beneath the exhaustion, something patient continued waiting for its moment to rise. Some endings never announce themselves when they leave. They disappear silently through the back door of your life while you remain distracted by old fears, old memories, and old versions of yourself that no longer belong in the room you are standing in. The clock kept moving while your spirit kept collecting small fragments of hope. Those fragments never disappeared, even during nights when silence stretched longer than comfort and mornings arrived carrying the same unanswered feelings. Type Amen if you are ready to receive peace in unexpected ways. There is a strange moment before transformation begins where nothing appears different on the outside. The same walls surround you, the same people speak to you, the same world keeps spinning, and yet inside, invisible doors begin unlocking one by one. You were never meant to stay trapped inside the version of yourself built only for survival. Survival protected you for a season, but your spirit quietly wanted more than endurance because deep inside you still remembered what it felt like to dream without fear. My beloved child, there are seasons when growth feels like loss because old patterns fall away before new strength arrives. During those moments, it becomes easy to mistake transition for failure when in truth something sacred is simply changing shape. The heaviness you carried started teaching lessons you never asked for. Patience grew in places where frustration once lived, compassion formed inside wounds that once stayed open, and resilience quietly built itself inside every ordinary day you survived. Comment 333 if you choose growth over fear. The world taught you to chase signs in loud places. It convinced you that meaningful change always arrives dramatically, but some of the most important shifts begin softly, almost too softly to notice. Perhaps this is why your spirit kept returning to moments of silence. Somewhere inside quiet spaces, you started hearing yourself again, not the anxious version, not the exhausted version, but the deeper voice beneath all the noise. Archangel Michael says that strength rarely enters through force. Strength often arrives disguised as patience, disguised as surrender, disguised as another ordinary day where you choose to keep moving despite not knowing what waits ahead. You learned how to survive storms while pretending sunshine still existed. Few people understand the courage required for that kind of survival because invisible battles often leave invisible scars. There were nights your thoughts became crowded. Memories replayed themselves repeatedly, regrets asked for attention, and uncertainty sat beside you longer than comfort ever did. Still, something remarkable continued happening beneath all of it. You kept waking up, kept trying again, kept carrying light into spaces that offered very little in return. The heart has strange ways of protecting itself. Sometimes it builds walls, sometimes it becomes silent, and sometimes it convinces itself that expecting less will somehow hurt less. Yet your spirit never fully agreed with those defenses. Somewhere underneath disappointment, hope continued breathing quietly, refusing to disappear completely. Type, "I receive peace," if your heart is ready for something new. 3 minutes can feel insignificant in ordinary life. 3 minutes disappear while scrolling, waiting, rushing, worrying, but there are also moments where 3 minutes become enough time to decide that suffering will no longer define the next chapter. Change rarely begins when circumstances finally become perfect. It begins when your relationship with yourself starts changing, when you stop speaking to yourself like an enemy and start treating your soul like something worth protecting. You spent too much energy apologizing for being affected by difficult experiences. Pain leaves fingerprints, loss changes rhythms, and disappointment reshapes expectations, but none of those things removed your value. My beloved child, your spirit was never asking for perfection. It was asking for gentleness, patience, and permission to heal without turning healing into another impossible task. Some people entered your life to stay. Others arrived only long enough to reveal what needed strengthening inside you. Some people entered your life to stay. Others arrived only long enough to reveal what needed strengthening inside you. Not every goodbye was punishment. Not every delay was rejection. Not every closed door was meant to wound you. Sometimes life removes distractions before clarity arrives. Sometimes silence appears because your inner voice finally deserves space to speak. Comment, moving forward, if you are releasing what no longer belongs. The strange thing about exhaustion is how quietly it builds. One difficult day rarely breaks someone, but hundreds of small disappointments stacked together can slowly dim even the brightest spirit. You adapted so often that adaptation became your identity. You became strong because circumstances demanded it, reliable because others expected it, and patient because there seemed to be no alternative. Strength served you well, but strength without rest eventually becomes heaviness. Even mountains are shaped slowly through seasons of pressure and release. There are pieces of yourself waiting to return. Joy waits. Curiosity waits. The version of you that once felt connected to possibility still waits too. Archangel Michael says your spirit remembers paths your mind forgot existed. What feels lost sometimes remains hidden only because life asked you to focus on survival first. The future does not always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it enters quietly through small decisions repeated consistently. One day you choose rest instead of guilt. Another day you choose honesty instead of pretending. Eventually those choices become a completely different life. You do not need permission to begin again. You do not need perfect timing. You do not need everyone to understand your transformation. Type Amen if you choose yourself today. There were moments when loneliness became familiar. Familiar things can feel safe even when they hurt because uncertainty often appears more frightening than discomfort. Still, your soul kept searching for expansion. Even during your lowest moments, some part of you quietly resisted becoming smaller. Growth often feels awkward before it feels beautiful. Seeds disappear underground before anyone calls them gardens. The chapter ahead may not look like what you imagined years ago. That does not mean it holds less meaning. Life changes people slowly. Tiny moments reshape entire identities while nobody notices the process happening. The person reading this now already differs from the person who entered the year. Experiences rewrote parts of you without asking permission. If you wish to express your support further, you have the option to give super thanks. Support does not always arrive through others. Sometimes support begins when you stop abandoning yourself during difficult seasons. My beloved child, the tenderness you keep giving away also belongs inside your own life. Compassion directed inward creates room for healing that force never could. There is wisdom inside your tiredness. There is information inside your frustration. There are lessons hidden inside your waiting. Not every delay existed to stop you. Some delays existed because preparation takes longer than desire. Comment 111 if you believe timing still matters. You are allowed to outgrow old dreams. You are allowed to change direction. You are allowed to become unfamiliar to people who only knew previous versions of you. Identity is not fixed stone. Identity moves, stretches, breaks apart, and rebuilds itself repeatedly throughout life. Some people measure growth through achievements. Others measure it through peace. Peace matters because inner conflict steals energy quietly. It drains joy, weakens confidence, and convinces people that exhaustion is normal. You deserve moments where breathing feels easier. You deserve spaces where your nervous system does not remain prepared for disappointment. Archangel Michael says courage sometimes looks ordinary. It looks like getting up, trying again, choosing kindness, and continuing despite uncertainty. The version of you that survived difficult seasons deserves acknowledgement. Survival required effort nobody else fully witnessed. Even now, there are parts of you still protecting wounds from years ago. Healing does not mean criticizing those protections. Healing often means thanking them and gently replacing them. Type peace if you are creating room for healing. You have spent enough time believing every difficult season defines your identity. Seasons pass even when they feel endless. Storms create temporary conditions. They are experiences, not permanent addresses. Look carefully at your own story and notice something important. You survived chapters that once felt impossible. The human spirit adapts beautifully. Sometimes too beautifully. You became accustomed to carrying burdens that were never meant to stay forever. Familiar pain can trick people into believing it belongs permanently. But heaviness is not destiny. Exhaustion is not personality. Fear is not identity. Something inside you already knows this truth. That quiet knowing kept you moving even when certainty disappeared. There are moments approaching where small choices matter more than dramatic actions. Choosing rest. Choosing boundaries. Choosing honesty. Choosing patience. Tiny decisions shape futures quietly. Comment new chapter if you are stepping forward. The next version of your life does not require becoming someone entirely different. It requires becoming more honest about who you already are. You carry kindness even after disappointment. You carry softness even after betrayal. You carry hope even after uncertainty. These qualities survived because they belong deeply to you. Some days transformation feels exciting. Other days it feels invisible. Invisible growth still counts. Roots expand underground long before trees change skylines. Your progress deserves recognition even when it cannot yet be measured. My beloved child, continue walking gently with yourself. The path becomes clearer when self-judgment becomes quieter. Nothing changed because magic suddenly appeared. Things changed because your perspective shifted enough to create space for possibility. And possibility changes everything. 3 minutes passed. You are still here. You are still becoming. And somewhere between the first sentence and this final moment, something inside you remembered that change does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives softly, sits beside you quietly, and waits for you to notice that you were never standing still at all. The quiet after realization often feels unfamiliar. Once your spirit begins noticing what has changed inside, ordinary moments stop feeling completely ordinary because awareness has a way of reshaping everything it touches. There was a time when you believed healing would arrive as one giant moment, one breakthrough strong enough to erase every difficult memory at once. Instead, healing arrived in fragments, in calmer mornings, softer reactions, and small moments where your heart finally stopped fighting itself. You spent years carrying expectations that never truly belonged to you. Expectations from strangers, expectations from family, expectations created during seasons when survival mattered more than authenticity. Now something gentler is asking for your attention. Not perfection. Not performance. Simply presence. Type Amen if you are choosing presence over pressure. Presence changes things slowly. It teaches you to notice how much energy disappears when your mind stays trapped in places your body no longer lives. The past taught lessons, but it was never meant to become your permanent address. Memories can visit without controlling the future. Some people are waiting for certainty before moving forward. Your spirit already understands that certainty rarely comes first. Movement creates clarity. Archangel Michael says progress often hides inside ordinary routines. The smallest acts repeated with intention eventually create the largest transformations. You may not feel powerful every day. Some days still feel heavy, some mornings still arrive with doubt, and some nights still stretch longer than comfort. That does not erase growth. Growth continues even during difficult weeks. There are hidden victories inside your story already. Boundaries you finally created. Habits you quietly changed. Moments where you stayed calm when an older version of yourself would have broken apart. Those victories matter because they prove something important. You are not standing where you once stood. Comment, "Still growing," if you recognize your own progress. Life has a strange habit of testing the lessons it teaches. The moment you begin choosing peace, distractions appear. The moment you choose boundaries, resistance arrives. This does not mean you failed. It often means change became real enough to notice. You deserve relationships that do not require shrinking yourself. You deserve spaces where your nervous system can finally rest instead of constantly preparing for disappointment. Peace is not laziness. Rest is not weakness. Gentleness is not failure. My beloved child, there are parts of your future already being shaped by choices you barely recognize as important today. Small acts of self-respect create foundations stronger than dramatic promises ever could. There are dreams you placed aside because timing felt wrong. Some of those dreams may return wearing different shapes. Do not reject them simply because they changed. You changed too. Type 444 if you are open to new beginnings. You were never meant to carry every burden alone. Strength becomes more sustainable when honesty enters the room. There is bravery in saying you are tired. There is wisdom in slowing down. There is power in refusing to continue cycles that damage your peace. The world often celebrates constant motion. Your spirit sometimes needs stillness. Stillness is where buried emotions finally speak. Stillness is where clarity returns. Stillness is where your inner voice stops competing with noise. Archangel Michael says the soul recognizes truth before the mind fully understands it. That quiet pull toward change exists for a reason. Notice how many times life redirected you when certain paths stopped serving you. At the time it felt frustrating. Looking back, many closed doors protected energy you would later need. Your future self is not asking you to become fearless. Your future self is asking you to keep going with honesty. Comment forward if you refuse to stay stuck. You have only these moments right now. This breath. This day. This version of yourself. And somehow, despite everything you carried, everything you lost, everything you survived, you are still creating another chapter. That alone is extraordinary. Not because you never struggled. Because you continued anyway. The shift you were waiting for may not arrive through noise. It may arrive through consistency. One peaceful choice. One honest moment. One gentle decision repeated again and again. And eventually, without realizing when it happened, you look around and understand something beautiful. Everything changed because you did.